I'm giving somebody the blues today.
And as you can see here, Tekken 7 is at 12 million copies. It's the best-selling, most successful Tekken ever made. Then you have Tekken 5. This time around, I combined Tekken 5 and DR together. Usually I have them separate. Tekken 5 is like 8 million, DR is like 2 million. You put them together, 10 million, right? And then from there, you have Tekken 3, 9 million, Tekken 2, 5,700,000. Tekken 6 is 3,500,000. And then this time I added Pokken as well. You know, Pokken is a Tekken game, but Pokemon. It's kind of like Tekken, but you can see there's a little bit more projectiles in there. And of course, like, it's more aerial and whatnot. That's interesting. Like, so this is, both of these players are players, right? But the guy in the green, the camera is like not favoring him. It's more so favoring Blastoids. And Pokken sold 3,417,000 copies, basically, right? It places very high in terms of every Tekken game, right? And you can argue that's, you know, probably because the Pokemon gives it that kind of, you know, advantage. Then you have Street Fighter Cross Tekken, which in my opinion, I think is a flop. I don't know if the Bandai Namco considers it a flop or if like the players consider it a flop, but in my opinion, when you think about Street Fighter and Tekken combining, it's supposed to be like one of the greatest like fighting games ever. And this game is far from that in terms of sales and also like longevity, tournament impact. This game was forgotten, you know. It just basically was very controversial. Instead of making a good game, they tried to go super crazy with monetization. If they were to try something like in today's landscape, maybe it will work. But back when that game dropped, you know, all that greedy predatory monetization didn't fly, you know. Tekken Tag 1, 2,300,000. So the thing about this game was immediately after Tekken 3, which was 9 million. So you had this massive success, and then they released the tag game, and in my opinion, I think that was a horrible decision. Not because I think tag games is bad, but because I think they had an opportunity for Tekken to transcend and become something like insane. You drop a game with 9 million copies, you're supposed to immediately follow that up with something very similar to Tekken 3. Like if they would have dropped Tekken 3 and then Tekken 5 right after, this game would have like 20 million copies. Like that, like if you think about it, that's what Call of Duty did. Call of Duty dropped like a Call of Duty 4, and you know, people like that game, right? They saw people like that game, and then they made Modern Warfare 2, which is like a better version of that game. But I think, you know, doing a tag, which changed the formula, and then doing the Tekken 4, which also changes the formula. I mean, look at the sales. After Tekken 4 sold 2 million copies and was considered a failure by the company, Harada quit for over a year and later returned with Michael Murray to make Tekken 5, which sold 10 million copies. An amazing story of overcoming failure to reach success. So this screenshot comes from the Tekken book, Art of Tekken. This is like a digital version of the book, but you can see part 1, 2, 3, 4. When you go to part 2, tag 1, 4, 5, that's where this comes from. And, you know, I think it's interesting because, you know, people look at Tekken 4 as one of the greatest Tekkens ever made, and they look at Tag 2 the same way. And I think it's interesting. Every single time you have a Tekken do horribly in terms of sales, you have just a bunch of players who swear up and down it's the greatest thing ever made, and they come up with all of these reasons why it didn't perform. And I'm not saying that they're wrong, that the game isn't the greatest ever made or whatever, but you know, something's not adding up basically. But you can see it says Tekken 4 released to the kind of rave reviews which Harada and Namco grown accustomed to. But this time, the fanfare did not last long. Longtime fans pushed back against the new changes. And this is what I always try to say as well, right? Like you guys say you love Gon now. You say you love Jun Kazama now. You say you love Tekken 4 now, Tag 2 now. But when you go back to when those games released and you look at the reviews for those games, you look at like quotes from that era, everyone's saying the opposite. Why is Jun Kazama gone from Tekken 3, 4, 5, 6? Harada says because she was not popular. Jun has always been popular. Harada says no. Will you consider adding Jun Kazama in Tekken 7? Harada said we couldn't get enough of an audience about her in Tag 2, so she was not popular. And I'm not saying that there's no one who loves it, but I'm just saying like the amount of people who were saying they loved it didn't exist back then. And we have evidence, right? This right here is evidence. And I know it's a hard pill to swallow. No one wants to know that their favorite thing like sucked at one point. But let's continue. They found the destructible environments to be a gimmick that distracted from the core gameplay. Just like Tekken fans right now say the heat system is distracting from the core gameplay, I can see Tekken fans saying these obstacles in the way and these ceilings and uneven ledges, because Tekken fans are saying the same thing now, so I can imagine them saying it about Tekken 4. In pushing the series forward, parts of the Tekken foundation, like emphasis on balance, has been left behind, so they're acknowledging that the game was underbalanced. After the release of Tekken 4, Harada left Namco. In quotes, it says, I never thought about quitting because game evaluations and fan communities, he says. Still, either due to internal pressures or his own feelings about the game's success, or because he has been working on Tekken for a decade nonstop, he left. After a year away, so 1 year away, Harada went back. Like Kazuya, who had survived his fall into a volcano years earlier, Harada returned stronger than ever. So Tekken 8 is currently at 2 million copies sold. So this guy says something's not adding up, right? And you can see this guy types how many copies has, I'm assuming this is Tekken 8 sold. So people are using this screenshot here to say that Tekken 8 sold 57 million copies worldwide. I don't fault players for jumping the gun here. This is from Bandai Namco, right? And they have this worded in such a way to where you would walk away thinking Tekken 8 did actually sell 57 million copies. So in the same time span that Street Fighter went from 3 to 4, Tekken players think Tekken 8 went from 2 to 58. So if Tekken 8 sold 58 million, it would be in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 top 10 best-selling video games of all time. This is a side note, but lately I've been reading less and less of the comment section on my YouTube channel because, like, you have people like that in the chat who say, bro, you're wrong. Tekken 8 sold 58 million copies. And it's like, I'm not even going to waste my time. Now, there's also some people who are looking at this and say, oh, well, Tekken 8's doing horrible then. And I don't think that's true either, because you got to keep in mind, this game has been out for like 8 months. All these other games have had their full lifespan, right? When they start dropping Heihachi and they start making the right decisions, they'll pick back up. Slow decline, I would agree. You have Tekken 1, which is at 1.7 million. You have Tekken Tag Tournament 2, which a lot of people say they love and say is one of the best Tekkens of all time, but it's the worst selling main Tekken. You have Death by Degrees. Death by Degrees is pretty interesting as well because every Tekken fan talks greatly about this game. They talk about it as if it's the best thing ever made. And then you look at the sales and you see only 70,000 people played it. So shout out to Merdoink. Merdoink asked the question, are there stats on Tekken 7 year by year? Or maybe it can be deducted by when Harada posts these images celebrating X million copies sold. Every million copies sold, Harada was there on Twitter to celebrate. When Tekken 7 hit 3 million copies, it was on 10/21/2018, and that was 507 days after release. When it hit 4 million copies, that was 280 days later. And then you skip all the way to the year 2024. This is almost 2 years later. Tekken 7 finally sells 11 million copies 442 days later. That's a long time. And this is largely because the developers stopped updating the game. There was no excitement during this time. It was a very dead moment. There was literally nothing going on, and it makes sense that the game would flatline. But what was interesting about Tekken 8 not only helped Tekken 8 sell copies, but Tekken 7 sell copies. Going from 11 million copies to 12 million copies, that was the fastest time that Tekken 7 has sold 1 million copies. Merdoink says, nice. I made a graph because I was bored and can't sleep. Shout out to bro. Bro got to get some sleep. So total 2,500 days. That's the total lifespan of console Tekken 7. Oh, so they made another graph. I didn't see this one, but here you can see. So this is Tekken 7. The blue line, and then this is Tekken 8. What I really love about Tekken 7 and Tekken 8 is that these are the only games where we can look like per million copies and graph it, because back in like Tekken 6 and 5 and 4 there was no Twitter, there was no constant update from the developers, so we didn't get an update every million copies sold like we did with Tekken 7. But with Tekken 7 and also with Tekken 8, they will give us a constant update, so we'll be able to compare them side by side and see which one comes out on top. I personally don't know if Tekken 8 will be able to beat Tekken 7 in terms of sales. It has the potential to, but the developers have to make the right decisions, and they have to do the right things, and they have to look at what made Tekken 7 so special to the players to where they wanted to buy it. And currently, I don't know if they're offering the things that the players would want to, I don't know if they're doing that, right?